Have you reached the point where money is no longer your biggest problem? You're not worried about rent, food, or emergencies. Once you could finally breathe, you didn't feel the relief like you thought you would. I'm talking about that moment no one prepares you for. You can't explain your current feeling of total dissatisfaction because you've already made it. And the pressure that used to drive you just disappears, but nothing rushes in to replace all of that. That moment is deeply disorienting, but that's the exact time to start doing things differently. Hi, I'm Janise. I work with the energy of dreams. I reject the idea of looking at your dreams with symbols or a generic list of meanings. If that's what you need, I am not the one. I guide people through dreams and use them to help people build emotional maturity, healing, and inner alignment. I've looked at thousands of dreams, and what I see again and again is this. When financial pressure lifts, there's a deeper belief pattern that rises to the surface to be noticed. And these patterns weren't so visible when survival was in charge. Dreams are where these seemingly invisible patterns show up regularly. If you've developed a good relationship with your dreams, you can see in 5 minutes what others struggle with for years. Let's stop struggling. Life is not about that. I'm going to share 3 real dreams and what the energy of each one revealed. As you listen, notice if any of these patterns have shown up in your dreams or in your waking life. When you look at all 3 of these dreams together, a pattern definitely appears. And if you're a first generational wealth holder, you may be inexperienced with financial responsibility and have porous boundaries. And I'm not talking about being a billionaire or even a millionaire. I'm talking about anywhere from being at the point where you can finally breathe financially than anywhere else above that. Your life strategies up to this point may have been ruled by endurance and isolation. And now that you can finally breathe financially, this can be followed by emptiness and disconnection, or even complete dissatisfaction, like you'll see with my personal dream that I'm going to share. This dream represents a turning point for me, one that came right around the time that I finally became financially stable. At the time, I genuinely believed that I was depressed. And honestly, that's what society said. And I tried that, but nothing shifted. And that's because the problem wasn't depression. The problem was that I was living a life that no longer felt true to me. And no one except my dreams had language for that. If we pause here, this is important because even if calling it depression had been accurate, how would that have helped me? I already knew how crappy I felt. A label doesn't tell you what belief you're living from, and it doesn't tell you what strategy you've adopted to survive, and it doesn't tell you what needs to change next so that you can feel better. It just names a state and leaves you. If I had relied on dream symbols, that wouldn't have helped either. I'll tell you how I saw my dream and why it helped me immensely. Here's the dream. I climbed up high into a tower completely alone. There was only one narrow stream of light coming in. I was barely living. I was eating bread and jam, just enough to survive. And I stayed there by myself. If I had looked this dream up on the internet, it might say a tower represents isolation or masculine energy, or climbing the tower was about being too much in my head. That type of interpretation would have totally missed the real issue. That's because the core issue wasn't about masculine energy and it wasn't about overthinking. My masculine energy and my brain are valuable assets. I was a physicist before doing dream work. I needed that. The core issue was programming, and it started much earlier than adulthood. This dream was rooted in a birth level wound, a very early pre-verbal conclusion that caused me to repeat to myself without even realizing it that it's not okay to be me. It's not safe to be seen. It's better to be quiet. It's better not to take up space. Don't make noise. Don't have expectations, and don't have any needs. That's not depression. That's programming that keeps me in survival mode. Over the years, I developed my own dream method because the symbolic crap just wasn't working anymore. My method asks, what belief system is organizing the dream? Where is Dharma flowing and where is it blocked? So let's look at my dream this way. Notice how I'm living inside this dream. I didn't fall into the tower. I actually climbed it. The dream was showing me the survival strategy that I had already perfected: reduce my exposure, reduce my expectations, and reduce my needs. In other words, if no one is coming, the best thing is just to be unreachable. That was my mindset. No one is there to help me, even if I asked for it. The safest thing to do is to lock myself away and just endure. Even the food in the dream, the bread and the jam, it's minimal, viable nourishment, enough to stay alive, to survive, but not enough to spark joy. This is where the Dharma was blocked. The most important thing in this dream was that stream of light. This is the flow in the dream. The light wasn't just a vague symbol of hope. It was instruction for me. So the dream wasn't saying isolate further because other people are just going to harm me. Misreading it that way would have been disastrous for me. It was saying let the light in, orient toward the light, focus on life, focus on what is still good. The dream didn't fix my circumstances overnight, but it changed my orientation. I did isolate for a time consciously as a way to recalibrate and see what really mattered, what to take and what to leave. And instead of organizing my life around just enduring or surviving, I began organizing it around what was alive. Everything that came later for me grew from that shift. If you remember your dreams, it's a massive gift. Not everyone does. When you remember your dreams, you have access to unfiltered truth. Your dreams are speaking directly to you without your conditioning or without anybody else's expectations layered on you. And they do it with more compassion than most people even give to themselves. Your dreams are your true friend. They want nothing else but to help you. That's why missing the point of a dream is so unfortunate. It's sad. Dreams are just asking to be listened to. Your dreams aren't asking to be decoded like a puzzle. Tell me what all these symbols mean, and I'll get some sort of help from it. Believe me, that was a huge mistake of mine to treat my dreams like that in the early days. Thank goodness I followed the light from my dream tower. So here's another dream example. This is from a client that I worked with who had reached financial stability later in life, like I had. He didn't grow up with wealth. Because of that, he had carried a belief that he just never questioned. If I have resources, then it's my responsibility to help other people. If I don't, then I'm selfish or ungrateful. And over time, people, women, acquaintances, friends came into his life for access. They needed things, they needed support. And because he had money, he gave. What followed was a long line of former friends who disappeared once they no longer needed him. Then came this dream. People entered his house and took things calmly and casually, even items they didn't even need. And after taking, they turned into ghosts and vanished. The dream showed him something crucial, that he wasn't actually helping, he was enabling. When we traced this pattern, it led to a birth wound belief. I'm not enough. Spending money had become a way to be valuable, to feel like he mattered. He committed to the 7-week, 12 chakra birth wound transformation journey. And during that time, the programming of I'm not enough dissolved. What replaced it was steady and embodied, I am important. And as that shift settled, his boundaries formed naturally. And the guilt around having money while others didn't disappeared. And of course, his dreams stopped showing people coming into his space uninvited and taking. The people that came into his life after that were there for him, not his resources. And here's another dream from someone who had total financial security. Outward, she was quite successful. Inward, though, miserable. She dreamed she was inside a beautiful house. The rooms were well designed, the lights were on, but the house was completely empty. She walked from room to room waiting for something to happen, but nothing ever did. At this point, she already knew something needed to change in her life, but knowing that wasn't enough. She had never had an example of ease, and she was so low on energy that hope just felt unattainable. She chose to work with me with dream coaching in my Dharmic six pack, and she sat with what the dream revealed: the emptiness, the waiting, and the readiness to change. Through this coaching program, she let go of obligations that she no longer needed to carry. She learned how to rest without guilt, and she learned how to inhabit her emotions instead of managing them. The dream just gave an opening. Working with it gave her a way forward. So sometimes seeing the dream message is enough. You see it and you go implement it. But sometimes it isn't enough. Maybe you think you need years and years of therapy for something to happen, but that's just not true. And maybe the belief goes so far back that it doesn't even feel like the way that you're acting is a choice. You're simply playing out your programming and it hurts. So if you've crossed some sort of threshold and something still feels off, just know that your dreams already know why. And again, thanks for dreaming with me. I'll see you again.